Paul Antonio, Master Scribe and Creative Director of Paul Antonio Scribe. I've been doing calligraphy for 25 years. My clients include Tiffany's, Joe Malone, the BAFTAs, British Museum. How to learn calligraphy. The first thing you have to consider before you even start thinking of learning to use calligraphy, apart from getting your tools ready, is the space around you, immediately around you where you're going to work. Consider that you need a lot of space immediately around you. You then need to have your tools ready, inks ready, not close to the paper because it's very easy to knock the ink over, and that's not a good way to start. And things must be easily reachable. What's the first thing you need to learn? Well, how does calligraphy work? I have a large range of rulers in the studio, and I generally mark up based on the sizes of the rulers. Now these sheets have been cut earlier on, but I will show you how to cut a sheet of paper properly. So what we're going to do is we'll put the sheet at the top and we'll rule from the underside of the sheet, and that gives us at least a straight line to work on. Now notice I'm actually using the edges of the paper to rule the lines. The reason for that is some people believe that if you just draw a line on a piece of paper, then you have a straight line to work with, and that's all well and good. But because there are 4 edges, if the edges are not symmetrical or not even with each other, your eyes will start picking up on these additional angles, which will also cause problems when you're starting to write. So this is called your baseline because it is the base of which the letters will sit on. The next thing you learn is you look at the tool that you're going to use. All letters are proportional to the tool that you're working with. And we make something called a nib ladder by placing little squares and just touching the squares to each other. This tells us how high the letters need to be based on the width of the pen. Now this is quite a difficult nib ladder to produce. You can actually produce a simpler one, which is more like a step ladder. And what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the basic underlying script for Italic. We have our nib ladder, we have our baseline. Italic is generally done between 4 to 6 nib widths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'll go at 5. What we're going to do is we're going to measure this off. I generally use another piece of paper to do this kind of measuring, because if you start using rulers, they can become problematic because you start adding angles of increment. And we'll rule the first line, and we'll also double up these lines above and below, and above again and below. This is much easier on an angled board, or if your board has a parallel motion ruler on it. So we have our baseline. Let's write this here. We have our X height or waist line. We have a descender line and we have an ascender line. Reason for that is our baseline keeps our letters on the base. Our ascender line is where the top of our letters with ascending bits like D, B, L, and then we have the descender line where letters with descending bits like G and J exist. We also have another line which is halfway between these two lines, and that is called our cap height. Yes, because the capitals are not actually written at the same height as the ascenders are. It's advisable to rule all these lines before you start drawing. Yeah? And that's essentially the underlying principle for all calligraphy. Always a baseline, an X height or a waistline, an ascender line, a descender line, and a cap line. Manuscript also produces this, which is called the manuscript calligraphy rule, which actually has these little grids on the side, and they tend to correspond to the nibs they have. So if you want to get away from all of this complexity, then get the rule, it's a little bit easier. But do remember, rule on a baseline, rule the top, mark off on both sides so that you're actually working from point to point. Don't assume that just marking this off will allow you to draw a straight line on the other side. And basically, that's how you learn calligraphy.